And we have begun. This is Phallus Uncut, the Rantzerker 82 after show. And yeah, so we're here, and some of us are queer, and deal with it.
We're going to continue.
Yeah. Let's see who's in here. We got Clockwork Owl, Jax, Luga Wanshu, Pippi, and somebody whose name I can never pronounce, Smart Dane, I guess. Smat Dane, and Travis Cannon that are watching from the live chat. What up, y'all? I'm still here with Allison and Teal Deer, as well as some of our more privileged patrons. Suck it.
Okay.
Do you guys want to keep doing the video?
I think let's continue.
All right. So I better give these guys the link though, right? So let me join the after show chat. Otherwise, they're not going to really be able to participate.
They have to go to the side tubes. All right.
Yeah. I got to give them the link, but let me go into the correct chat room. Where the hell is it?
I know there's a lot of them. It's Rant and Classic.
All right. Now, hold on. Let me find it. There it goes. I got it.
All right. So everybody, when Brian sends the link through,
go in there.
And go into the side tubes.
Yes.
I think I actually closed the side tubes, so I'm gonna have to go back in.
Jesus.
All right. Log in. All right. So we got three.
The bullying and the face of.
Oh,
sorry.
Shit. Oh shit.
Okay, I'm gonna go get my headphones.
It should stop. Yeah, you're gonna have to go get your headphones.
All right.
Professionalism.
Oh, this is the after show. We don't have to care as much. These are just the people who pay.
They're just your paying customers. It's fine. You can treat them.
Yeah,
like
they're
shit.
just.
Treat them like shit, huh?
Oh, wait a second. No, treat them like gold. We love you.
Like precious metals.
Like precious. Yeah, pound the
There was
crap
something
out
really
of
creepy
weird
about
shape.
that. I don't know what it was. I'm going to treat you like precious metals.
Precious metals. Like a Fabergé egg.
Are you going to make jewelry out of us?
Yeah.
It's possible.
I'm gonna wear you around my neck.
Okay. Are we ready to go?
Not sure if terrified of homicidal maniac or aroused. Which should I be, Brian?
Why not both? Fear can be an aphrodisiac. All right, so everyone's in the side tubes now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, there are two of you who are not in the side tubes. I'm guessing that me and Teal Deer are in. There's just one now. One who's not in the side tube. Bart is in. George E. Sorry, I'm butchering your name. Mr. 0303.
You're doxing everybody too.
Am I?
Stop doxing, yeah. I don't know.
Sorry.
I don't think you are. Unless Ritter von Trost is going to go after people. Because with a name like that, I would imagine that he would. He's like if that's your real name, dude, that is the shit. That's like a Bond villain name. Do you have like a Shark Tank, maybe? Or
They have lasers on their
do they
heads.
have laser beams attached to their friggin' heads?
Okay.
So is everyone in there?
Rolling.
No?
Let me double check. Let me see. This is a really slow process. Yes, everybody's in there.
All right. Let's hear more of this.
Everybody is in. Their hands are inside the boat, and we're ready to go.
All right, here we go.
Too many suicides of victims of bullying and the faceless acts of violence committed on the internet. Each and every day, whenever a woman dares to speak, whenever a feminist dares to demand an answer, and whenever a queer kid asks for justice. To study masculinity today
But
requires
remember,
that we be cognizant.
it's the MRM that use emotional arguments, guys. Remember that.
Yes. I'm waiting to hear him talk about his woke 8-year-old and what he said to him. Because we all know there's a lot of woke 8-year-olds walking around. All right, moving on.
Whatever. Well, babies. Of what is happening in these various spaces, and to once more reaffirm our commitment to feminist pedagogies, theories, and activisms. As such, what is politically at stake in this article is an argument about why scholars of masculinity studies, those of us who would be dismissed as pro-feminist scholars by the men's rights movement, need to pay attention to this movement and need to think carefully about what is happening on our campuses. Patriarchy, of course, as every scholar of gender studies agrees, is not a zero-sum game.
Every scholar agrees, therefore it's true.
Well, but what the hell is he getting at? I need to find out.
Well, we'll get to that, but first it's important that we know that he asserts from the get-go, patriarchy's real, that's not up for debate. As a consequence of that,
it is a site of intersectionality and multiplicity, wherein some men have a great deal of power and others have less power. Being male often provides membership to patriarchy, but the quality of the male's membership is not always the same. Intersectional theories have long demonstrated this point. Being a gay man in a patriarchal culture is not the same as being a straight man. Being a masculine gay man is not the same as being an effeminate gay man. Being a racialized man is not the same as being a white man. Being of a lower class is not the same as being of the upper classes, and so on. Admittedly, I am oversimplifying the complexities of intersectional theory. However, it remains essential for the field to acknowledge and admit these complexities if we are to mount a critique of men's rights activism.
Do you notice how intersectionality means that no matter what situation a man is in, a woman always has it worse?
Yep.
Because the man has privilege because he's a man. So even if he's a racialized man, whatever the fuck that means,
he
has privilege.
Race has been thrust upon him.
It's a racialized man.
Non-white. Yeah. It's white.
Non-white. White. Okay. White. Quite white. All right. So but a racialized woman is even more oppressed than a racialized man because in every circumstance he has male privilege. So, and what's interesting about this is you can pretty much do whatever you want. You could beat to death as many gay men as you want, but just as long as the lesbians are not being beaten to death, masculinity, you don't have to care. Because obviously the lesbians are in a worse position. Even though the gay men are bleeding to death in a sewer, the lesbians are always worse off. Therefore, you do not have to care about what's happening to gay men, because the lesbians are always worse off. Even if they aren't actually having anything done to them. Even if they just have words being thrown at them. You don't have to concern yourself with violent homophobia as long as it's not directed at lesbians. And thus, you don't really have to. You don't actually have to. You don't, in the intersectionality framework, you don't actually have to deal with violent racism, violent homophobia, any kind of classism. You don't really have to deal with the meat of any kind of bigotry or disenfranchisement, because women always have it worse off, and most of those things hit men more. And you don't see a lot of black women being shot in the head. No. Well, I mean, you see more black men being shot in the head. You see more white men being shot in the head because they're men. You know,
that's why Black Lives Matter doesn't work, because if you go to the Black Lives Matter website, you quickly learn, if you're paying attention, that it's actually a feminist cause, and they prioritize black women over black men, even though it started because of black men.
Yeah, well, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Black men are being shot, and women have it even worse, even though they're not being shot. So black men's victimhood of being shot is now women's victimhood of not being shot.
Well, there are women that are like mothers and sisters and cousins and daughters that lose these men, and it's terrible for them.
I was surprised.
Hillary Clinton told us so. Women are the main victims.
Hillary Clinton is still using her own victimhood of not winning the presidency, and is still not looking at herself for losing that presidency. She's still blaming everything else, everybody else, but herself.
Of course. Because she's the
ultimate victim. She's the ultimate victim of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
But it destroys itself. I mean, you look at Black Lives Matter. The whole concept just tore itself apart precisely because of intersectionality. Precisely because intersectionality is the best argument for perpetuating any kind of violent racism, any kind of violent homophobia, any kind of violent classism, insofar as they exist, outside of misgendry. Intersectionality is the best argument for maintaining the status quo.
I remember the video of that black woman. She had her man sitting beside her in the car, and she was sitting there talking on Facebook Live, I think it was. She was sitting, I have this man beside me, he's dying, he's dying, he's dying. And she was just sitting there on Facebook Live all the time, sitting there. And she was focusing on herself, the victimhood, just showing that on Facebook Live all the time. This is the ultimate victim.
That Reeve guy says, so black women are culturally appropriating the black men. Actually, goes up even further than that. All of it. Intersectionality is essentially a pipeline, taking all victimhood and giving it to white women. Because first you start with a black man, or really it's all men, but let's just use the Black Lives Matter rhetoric. You start with a black men being shot by policemen. You start with that kind of, it's not racist violence, but let's just presume for the sake of argument, you start with that quote-unquote racist violence. But because of intersectionality, we know black women have it worse than black men. Therefore, all of the victim points from being shot in the head is siphoned onto black women. But because of intersectionality, we also know that being a woman is worse than any racial factor. So, the black man who's shot in the head, all of his victim points siphoned through black women up to white women. Because white women have the most purified female victimhood. They are only victims because they're women, right? Those are the best victims. The very best.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was surprised you didn't do your voice.
What voice?
The best. The best words.
The best. Oh, not my Christopher Walken the best. It's more like the best. I wasn't prepared for that.
You wasn't prepared for
No,
this.
I didn't expect that. They're the biggest. They're the best victims out there. They're the best ones. I swear to you, believe me.
Maybe it's because you're doing it, and it's sort of like it's a sleazy politician maneuver.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, anyway, let's continue.
Moving on.
Precisely because white men, in general, hold a significant amount of power in not only the men's rights movement, but also patriarchy. This is an important point, precisely because the men's rights movement quickly can be construed as a kind of nostalgia for a simpler time of clearly defined patriarchy.
Okay, wait, what did you say, Sai? Okay.
Nothing.
Oh, all right.
Patriarchal entitlement. It is easy to note this. It is quite another thing to think about what this means and how it works effectively. What is so striking is how effective the men's rights movement has become. How it has co-opted the language of affect, emotion, feeling, and the personal being political to meet its own ends. The men's rights movement, we might...
It's co-opted the language of having feelings. Seriously?
Yep.
It's co-op. So essentially, because men's rights activists talk about having feelings, about having anger, about feeling shame, they've co-opted the language of what being human.
Well, it says
God forbid.
they've co-opted the language
being
and about the personal being political to meet its own ends. So their complaint is that they're stealing all of these strategies from feminism, and feminism has them, trademark, registered copyright. No one else is allowed.
But that doesn't. They're not. This is essentially saying that men have reactions to things that affect them negatively, and that is, this only makes sense if you think of feminism being about female victimhood. So, and women's negative reactions to being victims. Then this makes sense that the men's rights activists are co-opting something, because they're co-opting the reaction of victimhood, I suppose, or the reaction to being a victim, emotional reaction to being a victim. Wow. Mm-hmm. They're really threatened by that. You can keep going.
Smart Dane, Chicago is awesome. Seriously. Okay, moving on.
I'd say, has appropriated the language of feminist consciousness raising. The men's rights movement may well be a post-feminist strange stirring, in which men desperately want to speak about their anxieties over masculinity but can find no way to do so. These activists hold that rights have been taken away from them, and they believe that men have become victims of feminism and or feminizing processes. Indeed, we might go so far as to argue that the men's rights movement capitalizes on what Warren Farrell has called victim power, which for Farrell was a feminist ploy that worked to convince the world that we lived in a sexist, male-dominated and patriarchal world, which is now being recast for men who apparently still live in a sexist world, but a world that is now gynocentric, or a kind of gynotopia, as Paul Nathanson and Catherine K. Young insist. The men's rights movement is not new, though. It seemingly has become more prevalent in recent years. Some might say some of the popularity of the movement, at least within North American culture, begins with Robert Bly's best-selling Iron John and the mythopoetic movement. However, this is not the case. Read today, and in light of the men's rights movement, Bly's Iron John seems tame in relation to the kind of arguments we see about men from the men's rights movement. Indeed, it is imperative that we recognize that Bly and the men's rights movement would seemingly have very little in common today. Bly believed that the boys in our culture have a continuing need for initiation into male spirit. And more particularly, Iron John is a meditation on homosocial community and bonding. It is important to note that Bly's work is markedly different from the ascendant men's rights movement. E. Anthony Rotundo writes that the writing of Robert Bly explicitly rejects middle-class machismo and the disdain for all things feminine, nor does Bly condemn feminism or feminists, which is a stark contrast from the men's rights movement, which is fundamentally informed and committed to an anti-feminism and a renunciation of all things feminine.
I just want to say that Rotundo is the really, really unfortunate name for a guy, but moving on.
The men's rights movement is framed as a backlash.
Can I just sort of ask a question here? It's like they're saying the men's rights movement is fundamentally informed by and committed to an anti-feminist and a renunciation of all things feminine. When, again, has anyone ever encountered anyone in the men's rights movement or anyone saying feminine things should not exist?
Nope.
No.
Or that feminine behaviors should not exist?
Nope.
No.
I don't even think, people I don't think the MRAs do it. I don't think that pickup artists do it. I don't even think that MGTOW do it, save for a couple. So, I don't know where that's coming from.
Yeah, it's
unless you see men that just want to be masculine and they like and they're comfortable in their masculinity and they like being masculine men, somehow that is a rejection of the feminine. Which I don't see how that could be, but I think that I could see how these people could see it that way.
I think in a lot of ways Robert Bly really embraced this idea that a man needs to be defined by what he does. And women's vulnerability and incapability and weakness and victimhood offers men an opportunity to be defined by what they do because they give them something to do. But I don't think that's. I mean, I think a lot in the current men's rights movement is sort of challenging that, and maybe that's where we challenge the idea that women or victimhood should be synonymous with womanhood, maybe. I don't think he's looked that deeply into it. I think he's just talking shit. It's more shit spaghetti.
Yeah. Shall we continue?
Yeah, keep going, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
Which is a stark contrast from the men's rights movement, which is fundamentally informed and committed to an anti-feminism and a renunciation of all things feminine. The men's rights movement is framed as a backlash strand of the men's movement. The Madison 1994. That is, it is but a part of the movement that turned attention to men and masculinity, of which Bly was a part. Instead, men's rights activists hold that the women's movement has gone too far and has harmed men in profound and fundamental ways.
Okay, well, here's a
Accordingly-
question. These people, I guess, come from the assumption that feminism can never go too far, which is very dangerous. And how do you determine when feminism goes too far? That's the thing. A lot of feminists don't seem to have, or no feminist I've ever talked to has some sort of exit plan for when, oh yeah, we've sort of hit too far now, ladies. Let's stop doing it. And instead they just invent new ways of being victims. Keep going.
A writer like Robert Bly is quickly dismissed because he does not denounce or renounce feminist thinking. Indeed, in a critique of Robert Bly, Nathanson and Young write, "For some men, especially those in the mythopoetic movement associated with Robert Bly, gynocentrism has highlighted qualities that could benefit men no less than women. They have tried to feminize themselves to emphasize their feminine side. Bly becomes, before Nathanson and Young, an honorary woman. Their term for all men who refuse to be male, which is to say, not pro-feminist and committed to a biological determinism that affords the male access to being male."
What the fuck? Again, this seems like that. This thing just flooded off of my brain.
You ever get the feeling that in order for these papers to be considered academic, they have to have a minimum, word count or page number or something, and then the person that writes it is like, okay, this is what I want to say. Let me see how I can make this drag out for fucking 10 pages. Is that what's happened
some
here?
Word salads.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I've been to college. I've had to write papers and take something that could be easily explained in a single paragraph and make it stretch out for 5 pages or whatever. I wonder if that's not what this is, because he's already basically said what the paper is. MRAs are invalid because they argue from emotional appeal, and they are not actually using reason, evidence, science, logic, or any of those things. They're just mad and or sad, and they're just flailing, and that's basically the whole thing. And he could have, that's it. Even I was repetitive just now. He could have said it in like a sentence.
Yeah, but he's now filling it up with stuff like misogynist and all the standard tropes that are coming out of feminist sides about MRAs.
Yeah, how do you write for this long so much bullshit?
And how did you make such an incredible error? This is the paragraph you just. Bly becomes
still be wrong.
Bly becomes for Nathanson and Young an honorary woman, their term for all men who refuse to be male, which is to say, not pro-feminist and committed to. Okay, so no, he didn't make an error. Not pro-feminist and committed to a biological determinism that affords male access to being male. Well, do they ever talk about biological determinism that affords the female access to being female?
No.
Well, no, of course not, but that is something which is determined by biology. If you are born female, then you have a shot at being female. If you're born male, you have a chance of being male. That's how biology works. That's how cells split. That's how gametes split.
Why
you get a pair of chromosomes. That's it. You get an SRY gene.
What does it matter so much? Like, this is what's so incredible about all of these identitarians. They are absolutely obsessed with this shit. Like, why do you need 72 genders? Why don't you just enjoy the fact that you have peculiarities in your personal being? Why do you have to make it into a gender? Like, why do we need more than 2? And then everybody else can just be, we don't have to stigmatize personal expression. And we don't have to say, oh, you have to act like this in order to definitely be a man or definitely be a woman. But at the same time, we don't need like all these multiple genders. Why? Why do we need them? How does that reduce the importance of gender? In fact, it seems to be increasing it. Instead of you having 2 categories which has a fairly wide arrangement of potential personal characteristics, you have all of these 72 things defined by those that are explicitly defined by those personal characters. And where does it end? I mean, do we have like 8 billion genders? And at that point, is there even a point to the word genders? That like the end game? I have no answers. I have only questions.
And those questions will never be answered.
I think they just fundamentally want to have a single word that describes them as a person, and for everyone to have that word. Or to have a word. Rather than daring to ever have to be associated with another person. That always seems to be what it comes down to.
Indeed.
So yeah, it would be very useful if everyone could have a unique series of sounds that, whenever ushered, means we know the exact one person that you're talking about, but that's not possible. There's only a certain amount of sounds that we can make and a certain order in which we can have them before it becomes impractical, and there's only a certain amount that people can memorize, like sequentially as well. So you can't come up with 8 billion different things, all of which will be rememberable according to what they associate with. So it's impossible.
All right, moving on.
Say, not pro-feminist and committed to a biological determinism that affords the male access to being male. The curiousness of this is that the men's rights movement will make essential homosexuality its central and governing claim, and as a corollary, all men who are not standing in lockstep with the men's rights movement are misandric, and thus pro-feminist honorary women and women lovers. But though the men's rights movement is fundamentally and constitutionally homosocial, the movement itself is not homosexual, but indeed, seemingly, rabidly homophobic.
Whoa, what?
Oh my god.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Rabidly. What's rabidly homophobic? Does that mean that we go around biting gay
As
people?
opposed to just very.
Foaming at the mouth, just...
As soon as we see a gay man, we start slapping them and we start shouting at them.
I thought that we basically just start foaming at the mouth and we bite them and we spread our rabies to them. And then they
zombies.
Go... Yeah,
like
that's how we
zombies.
spread them.
Ah!
20...
Like in the invasion of the body snatchers.
Yeah.
Ah!
It's 28...
I cannot do this.
It's 28 gays later.
Is Mike Pence the emperor of the MRM?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I'm shocked that you would say that. Shocked.
Well, according to Seto, we are a bunch of homophobes, but...
Oh my god.
You know the guy who just comments on every show? You know him?
Yeah, I know the name. I don't know who the person is. Seto? I know the name. I've seen it. I have a vague...
he doesn't cotton much with us. He finds us to be homophobic and...
Oh, homophobes. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Where's he get that from? Or is that asking too much logic?
I think it's because people use the term fag, ironically.
Oh, yeah. We can't use the word fag. And it's just, maybe it's getting to the point that we're just not kissing enough gay ass, and he thinks that because we're not praising people for their sexual preferences, that somehow we're against it, because that's what homophobia, or we fear it irrationally. I don't know.
What homosociality is a way of shaming men who are engaging in or any kind of cooperative or social relationship with each other by associating it with homosexuality. Is essentially, or even if they aren't associating it with homosexuality, and there shouldn't be any shame with homosexuality, they are problematizing it by giving it a fucked up name like homosociality. Why don't you just call it friendship?
Well, homosociality just means that it is of one sort of social bent or one sort of social idea, which I find really weird given his previous 2 paragraphs where he outlines all of the different ways that it's existed and how various writers about it have disagreed. That means it's not homosocial.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
By definition. It can't be. And also then, are you trying to say that feminism isn't homosocial?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, we know that it isn't, because it is not a monolith, but by the same token, the men's rights movement is not a monolith. As he's even said, I am differentiating and removing from this intactivism and father's rights.
Right.
So he's reneged on what he said only a few paragraphs ago.
Good catch. He's a slime ball, is what you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
All right, moving on.
He might be rabidly homophobic.
He might be. He might be.
I just love this, how a rabidly homophobic movement wants to stop gay men from being thrown off of roofs because Islam sucks for men too, guys.
Yeah.
That means you really hate the gays. You don't want them to be thrown off of buildings.
And you're
Such
also
is your
not,
hatred.
You also need cultural enrichment. It's just their religion, y'all. It's just their religion. You don't take away their ability to practice it. God damn it.
We're 17 minutes in, and we hit the homophobia kind of check mark. When do you think the Islamophobia one comes up?
You know what? I think racism's come up already because he said it's basically mainly white straight men. So fuck it.
Islam is different than race. It's just that.
No. You don't understand how this works.
Right. I forget. I have to unlogic myself.
Yeah.
Not that I mean to put too many spoilers out there, but I do believe that later on he does play the Nazi card.
Oh,
I mean, are we really surprised though?
Because the way he capitalizes the term feminazi.
Okay. All right. Let's go. I wouldn't have called them feminazis anyway. I think they should be called femicommies or something like that. But
Femicommies.
Femicommies, yeah.
Femifascists.
Yeah, femifascist. That's good too.
Femifa.
None of this, of course, makes sense, which is precisely the point. In developing an ideology, the movement has failed to account for and consider even its most basic of principles. The men's rights movement is about a certain type of man who desires homosocial community and bonding, but not homosexuality, even though the movement flirts with the very limits of orientation when advocating for intimacy between men. And though he does not desire men...
You wouldn't do that if you were a rabid homophobe, would...
What? I think we lost Teal'dir. Teal'dir just cut out. I think maybe he overdrove his mic.
No, that's unlikely. I'm still here.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So...
Yeah, that's not the actions of a homophobic movement.
You flirt with the limits of orientation when advocating for intimacy between men. So, are you advocating for intimacy between men? You're not a homophobe then.
This could also be a shaming tactic because I noticed that a lot of time feminists accuse, they try to make these subtle accusations that MRAs are closet gay men that are, angry or uncomfortable with their gayness, and instead they lash out at other women and other men who are gay. And this could be one of those moves, which I think is funny considering that supposedly they're not homophobic, yet they think that to throw the accusation that a man might be in the closet as though it's some kind of insult, doesn't that require a bit of disdain for gay men to do in the first place?
Yeah.
Teal'dir, were you going to say something, or did you say yes?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay. There's just a little bit more.
His relations with women are fundamentally problematic, since women, particularly feminists, are the source of all of his anxieties. How then do scholars of masculinity studies approach, think about, and theorize the men's rights movement, even if it has yet to declare its own intentions, theories, and methodologies outside of anti-feminism? I want to be very careful here, for I am not...
But it has.
Oh.
What is father's rights? What is intactivism? Those things you hand-waved away.
Yeah.
They have methodologies.
It's not a methodology.
Ban male circumcision. That is the methodology. That's it. That is the intention.
Okay. Yeah, but it's not a methodology. It's just a recognition of reality. That these things are not equal, that fathers don't have equal rights, that boy infants don't have equal protections to their genitals, that male rape victims don't get equal consideration. I mean, this is all just, these are realities. It's not a methodology, except,
Well, that's just it. But by recognizing that, you've also set out the methodology for how to fix it. Because once you've identified the problem, you have necessarily inferred a methodology. So if I point out to you, there is a legal disparity between the genital integrity of girls and boys, well, the methodology for that is then self-evident. It's fix the law. Either make girls' genitals free for cutting or make boys immune from it.
Mm-hmm.
So
preferably make everybody immune.
Yeah.
Okay.
The methodology or method? Because methodology is the science of the methods of talking about methods.
Okay, let's just continue.
Outside of anti-feminism. I want to be very careful here, for I am not interested in...
I get what this is. I get. Okay, so what he's saying is that we have no methodology outside of saying, opposing the ideology that society be judged by women's benefit alone.
Yeah. Please stop doing that.
So in other words, if feminism ceased existing tomorrow, we would have nothing more to do. We wouldn't want to actually start changing the laws that don't protect male victims of domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, and genital mutilation. We wouldn't want to change the laws, or we wouldn't want to address the issue of fathers not getting a fair shake in custody. We'd have nothing left if we got our anti-feminist aims completed. Well, no, actually, we would just be the first step to starting to address these issues. That's not our methodology. Well, it'd be like I don't know how I can't think of an example, but to get rid of the people who oppose actually addressing men's issues would be the first step to addressing men's issues. It's not the final step. It's just the first. Okay, I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
Their politics, but rather I am interested in exploring how affect informs these movements, and what our responses to these affects might be. That is, I want to take seriously their claims of feeling, and why someone like Warren Farrell would want men to speak of their feelings. Andrew Kimbrell, for example, in The Masculine Mystique, writes, "Whatever age, political persuasion, race, or creed, these men share a common condition. They feel bewildered, out of control, numbed, angered, and under attack. I am explicitly interested in how affect is being used. How do we think about men's feelings? Feelings these men feel are questioned, lamented, dismissed." Simon O'Sullivan notes
by dismissing
there is
them.
no denying or deferring affects, and that affects are the stuff that goes beneath, beyond, and even parallel to signification.
What the
And further, that you cannot read affects, you can only experience them.
Do you guys want to add anything to this tripe?
You cannot read affects. Okay, signification. Let's take a look at the possible definitions of this word, because we don't know if they actually use this word or
if it's just something that they pulled out of their ass.
Yeah, representation or conveying of meaning. So what they're saying is that emotions are just emotions, they don't convey meaning. So essentially, I think that what they're saying is that they can't read meaning into men's emotions, and that's frustrating them because they want to read meaning into men's emotions, meaning such as rape culture, male privilege, etc. And they're being forced to just accept them because feels is reals, right? You gotta just accept. You gotta accept the feels that people have. You can't question them. You can't search them for greater meaning or dismiss them. So they're trying to figure out within the framework of their subjectivities how to deal with men's feelings, how to essentially piss all over them, but without violating their own bullshit. It's interesting. It's actually interesting. Let's see if he manages it. It's like watching a gymnast go through like one of those super dog challenge courses.
Excuse me.
It's like watching a diabetic try to run through the ultimate ninja warrior fucking obstacle course. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
With a club foot.
Go.
If we admit that this is the case, then the declaring of affect is a remarkably powerful declaration precisely because it cannot be denied. That is, by turning to affect the men's rights activists, do not need to prove the truth of their claims because they're affects.
See, exactly. So they don't need to prove that they're having these feelings because they're feelings, and feelings don't need proofs, yo.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is what he's wrestling with. He's wrestling with the fact that men have feelings, and feelings are inviolate in his particular ideology. But men suck, men gross, men ugh, yuck, icky. So how do I reconcile the fact that I have to respect feelings with my great and burning desire to shit all over men? Especially when men are expressing their feelings, yo. So he's trying to figure that out. He's trying to figure out how do I shit on men without violating my need to respect feelings. Let's see if he does it.
Yep.
The feeling that it is true trump the veracity of the thing causing the feeling.
Triggered.
I want to offer a brief caveat here. I'm drawing on affect theory, but I am not making a specific argument about given affects.
How do you deny men's lived experience?
I've lost my bloody place. Oh, yeah.
How do you? He's essentially struggling with the need to deny men's lived experience
Yeah,
without violating his own philosophy. Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
Just let it go all the way through.
Let's go.
Gets a lot of gobbledygook.
Instead,
no, it is some guy just saying their lived experience is valid, but.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
If
my work is interested in the use of affective language, emotions, and feelings. I do not believe it is an accident that white men are turning to affective utterances to mark their claims. Indeed, there is something remarkably political about these claims. These claims become indisputable precisely because affects cannot be read. One can only experience them, and in this regard the men's rights activists become essentially phenomenological. My experiences are my experiences, and you cannot deny them because I believe them to be true. That is, even if quantitative, qualitative, and factual research demonstrates that the apparent cause of these effects is incorrect.
Which is not true. It's fucking not. You don't even have that.
The fecal matter is dripping out of my ear.
Okay, so he's saying that because men's feels aren't backed up by reals, that still doesn't matter because they have to be accepted. Lived experience. You can't question lived experience. And he's saying that the men's rights movement is deliberately turning to lived experience, the emotional affect and lived experience, to hide its lack of scientific rigor. And he's full of shit because nobody's deliberately turning to anything. They're just having experiences.
We constantly hear whenever you argue with like a feminist or anything having to do with that realm is that their women's lived experiences are what should spur conversation or whatever. So it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, they're essentially they're creating a hierarchy of lived experience without trying to contradict the idea that lived experience is inviolate in their philosophy. You cannot question.
Stack.
Yeah, but at the same time they're trying to shove in two concepts: that men's lived experiences are inferior to women's lived experiences, but lived experiences are all equal, or some shit. Okay, let's continue.
Okay.
Misguided. We can still not deny the veracity of the affect. Indeed, I am going to accept the premise that we cannot deny affect, though I am willing to imagine that some would certainly be willing to mount this argument, and I'd imagine would be successful, say, faking it, crocodile tears and so on. But then, how do we think about affect in this very particular and very gendered scenario of the men's rights movement? For one, I think the answer is to position affect, feeling, and emotion alongside phallicism. That is, I will argue here that affect becomes phallic.
I'm just going to point something out. We are listening to an academic argue that a group of people's feelings are irrelevant. Essentially, try to argue that a group of people's feelings should be disregarded. This is where we're at. We don't need to care about these groups, this groups of people's feelings or their effects, or their affects. I just find that astounding that we're there. We have academics arguing that certain groups their feelings are invalid. That's
well, it is the current year, Alison.
All right, continue. Sorry.
Insofar as it will carry on the symbolic role of the phallus, which stands in and up for the man. More particularly, I will demonstrate that the turn to affect is provoked by a castration anxiety that has become central to men's rights, and the turn to affect thus returns the phallus to male subjectivity. That is, castration is a loss that needs to be recuperated, and effective language and utterances will fill this void. Affect thus is a way to recuperate the castrated patriarchy in a way that cannot be denied.
Well, if the patriarchy if the patriarchy is castrated, then why are you continuing? Like, I mean, or now you're just amputating.
Yeah. We broke your patriarchy. Now you're just crying about it. Oh shit, son. Wait a minute. I just undermined literally
everything.
You cut out there.
So now we have to now that men are crying about the broken patriarchy, we have to make up some new shit about how their tears are a new patriarchy. So we smash the patriarchy with a hammer, and the guy whose face we smashed is on the ground screaming in agony, and that screams of agony have to become the new patriarchy, because Satan always exists somewhere. Until dear, you cut out.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh well.
That's why I was like, you're back. Okay.
Welcome back.
Hey.
Your front. Okay, moving on.
Thus is practical, political, and phallic.
Okay, well, could men express any pain without it becoming phallic in this guy's estimation?
No.
He just made it so that
it's projection. It's like they're obsessed with their penises. That's why they're making these emotional arguments. Really?
Jesus Christ.
You just said that without a hint of irony? Yeah, I remember. Actually, you know what? He's probably got a point, because I remember when we went to the ICMI, we were all wearing hats in the shapes of penises. And I was wearing a giant scrotum suit because I was so concerned with what that people knew that I had to let them know that my balls have their own voice. That's what we did at the last ICMI. Fuck issues. Penis.
Jesus Christ. So
seriously.
I guess, so essentially what he's saying is because his philosophy makes affect inviolable. Like, you cannot question affect. So affect has a power. Now these men's rights activists are appropriating that power. Because it's a bunch of men appropriating a power, it's obviously phallic.
Yeah.
And they're using the phallic power of affect. And it's not phallic when women appropriate this power. It's only phallic when men appropriate the power, because men. But they're using the power of affect to replace their castrated penises because they feel powerless. And this is the way that he's going to make it so that men expressing any kind of emotion continues to be illegitimate. And they wonder...
This guy needs to get his colon examined, because he is just straight up pissing and bleeding out of his asshole in this write-up. It's so fucking... It's just nothing. It's completely vacuous.
The logic... Okay, this is the logic. There is a logic to it.
It's an hour-long wet fart.
Okay, so there's a logic to it, okay? He has a particular philosophy in which emotions cannot be questioned. Lived experience cannot be questioned. He sees men's rights activists expressing their lived experience of disenfranchisement. And Andrew, could you mute when you're not talking, because there's a lot of weird shit coming through. He sees men's rights activists appealing to their lived experience to talk, I have these experiences, I have these emotions. And he sees that in terms of power. And because he sees that in terms of power, or he sees that in terms of men's rights activists grabbing a power for themselves. And he's saying that because men's rights activists feel castrated by feminism has taken away their patriarchal privilege, their phalluses, and thus castrating them. He's saying that because these men feel castrated, they're using the affect to become the power of the lived experience, the power of the emotion, the fact that these people cannot question it because of their philosophy. They're using that power to create, I don't know, a fake phallus out of emotions that they could use to fill in the void of castration. And this is how he's going to create a situation where it's invalid for men to express their emotions or to appeal to lived experience, to say, hey, this is something we need to consider. You can't question it because it's my lived experience. Because now he's saying that the lived experience is associated with patriarchy, with phalluses, and because of the power of it, and therefore men shouldn't have access to it. Because when they do it, it's patriarchy.
Yeah.
There is a logic to this. I mean, it seems like it makes no fucking sense, but there's a logic to it. He is weaving a path to delegitimizing men's emotional experiences from their emotional expression from their experiences. And he has to do that because he exists within a philosophy where lived experience, you can't question it. So he has to develop some fucking way to say, no, we can ignore men's lived experience. And this is how he's doing it. All right. Continue?
All right, continue.
Is practical, political, and phallic. Since patriarchal and hegemonic masculinity's goal is to become larger, to take up more space and yield less of it, we can turn our attention to the correlation between the transformation of the limp penis into the large, hard phallus. And
What?
Does this have illustrations of porn?
No.
This is some black analysis shit right there.
Exactly. This got big black cocks.
Oh, God. All right. Let's see where he's going with this.
Okay.
Down the rabbit hole.
as I would argue, the question of affect and
Down the
masculine
butthole.
privilege. Affect, in the men's rights movement, is phallic insofar as it aims to make issues larger. Hoping that their claims will somehow take up more space in our political, legal, cultural, and academic discourse, and ultimately will yield less room to competing discourses precisely because one's claim to affect or feeling a given way cannot be denied.
Did you
Just
just
as-
see the politics here? They don't want to concede their political power. The female
Stop
victimhood-
emotionally manspreading. That's what you're doing. You are emotionally manspreading into discourse and conversation.
And they don't want to concede their political power because female victimhood, exclusive, raw, virginal female victimhood, is the greatest source of political power. And you don't want to adulterate it with recognizing male victimhood. Then it loses all of its potency. You know, what's one drop of shit in a vat of wine? It's shit. You know, it makes the wine shit because there's a drop of shit in it.
Not really.
Okay.
All right,
Continue.
shall we?
The phallus cannot, however much we might try, be denied. It can be denied access, but its power and symbolism remain essential to a variety of discourses, even as a site of resistance or as a site of power and celebration, such is the case of the men's rights movement. The central claim of the men's rights movement is that something has gone horribly wrong. Society has failed boys, and men are lacking. Even scholars outside
Men are
of the
lacking.
men's
Yes, and also all powerful and privileged.
rights movement have commented on the shifting dynamics surrounding boys, men, and masculinity. Many of the young men in Michael Kimmel's Guyland feel anxious and uncertain about their futures, about the shifting ideas about gender and sexuality, and about claims to masculinity. These feelings of anxiety and uncertainty are often located in the fear that those bitches have taken over, as Patrick, one of Kimmel's angry white men, or at least angry white guy. Patrick, while certainly a fascinating case study, is also in many ways
Okay, here's
merely
the
an
question.
archetype.
Okay, here's the question. Women have taken over. At what point can men express fear over this? Like, it comes back to my question about feminists having an exit plan. At what point do they know when they've gone too far? If you can't if men have absolutely no way of tapping out or screaming in pain, when do you know that you've broken something?
Well, if they don't know by now, then they're never going to know because they've already gone way too far. They don't care.
They're stigmatizing any expression that you've gone too far. You've gone too far in one direction, because that's just an expression of feminism has gone too far, and they're stigmatizing it.
Yeah, because they don't think they've gone far enough, and they don't like that someone is telling them that what they're doing is harmful. And yeah, I mean, they just want to keep going because there's never enough, because the way feminism works is it defines, it's defined by its victimhood, right? So it never ends. There's always something to bitch about. Always. Air conditioning, for example. So, yeah. I mean...
Okay.
It's a hole without end. Like Amy Schumer. Alright, moving on.
A typical or recurring image or example of the aggrieved, angry white man that Kimmel imagines and thinks about in his work. We can find numerous examples of these kinds of effective utterances. For instance, even the most cursory review of A Voice for Men's forums, web pages, and Facebook group, this feeling of failure, this feeling of being castrated, or that the bitches have taken over, is found in Hannah Rosen's The End of Men and the Rise of Women.
Wait, Hannah Rosen's?
Yep.
Okay.
A similar example, as Albert Mohler, president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, recently asked, "What does it mean for large sectors of our society to become virtual matriarchies?" And Mohler concludes, "The real issue here is not the end of men, but the disappearance of manhood." Indeed, Helen Smith has gone so far as to say, not only have women in essence taken over, as Patrick would have it, but they are now on strike. They are boycotting marriage, fatherhood, and the American dream. And the subtitle to her book, Men on Strike, reads, "Throughout my study, while I focus on Patrick, he is but an archetype of any number of men on strike, or on men who have gone their own way, and of men who have bought into the idea that women have once and for all taken over." Patrick further explains, "They're everywhere. You know that ad. It's everywhere you want to be. That's like women. They're everywhere they want to be. There's nowhere you can go anymore. Factories, beer joints, military, even the goddamned firehouse. We working guys are just fucked." While we do not see the language of effective utterance, we certainly recognize the way anger is working here, and moreover how the phallus, now a feminine phallus, since men have lost all power, so the argument of men's rights would go, rears its head. Working guys are just fucked.
The feminine phallus?
What?
Like an oversized clitoris? Oh, this is...
Well, what? You're introducing new fucked up terms here, dude.
The feminine phallus, which is what the men's rights refer it to because
could that be considered transphobic?
They've lost their phallus. They've been castrated. Could that be considered transphobic? No, I think that might be a bit inclusive because not all women have vaginas.
All right.
So, yeah. I don't know. This is just...
Men don't have, especially men on like campuses, if they try and do anything. There's women's centers left and right on like college campuses, these safe spaces that they can go to. But God forbid a man tries to start a man center or just a man space where guys can go and hang out and be just guys. They don't have to worry about being told what they can and cannot feel or what they can and cannot do. God forbid that somebody tries to do that and, oh, look, it's shut down and they're shamed for trying to open a man center. Like,
yeah, I think we should probably, like, we can get through half of this, eh? And then maybe...
we are half.
We are on it.
Oh, it's just about...
Okay, let's get through half and then call it a day.
Okay.
Why, you want to do more? Holy shit.
No. No, I don't think this is actually... I'm not getting the rigor out of this that I was hoping to. I'm not getting enlightened in the way that.
So you find this to be sort of a flaccid academic piece?
This is diarrhea. Just pure diarrhea. Just nothing but like fucking mustard yellow liquid shooting out of an asshole of the same points. It just goes on and on and on, and I'm not getting. There isn't even corn in this shit. I'm not getting any nutritional value out of this.
No, there's no shit value in this.
There's no.
None.
It's not. You can't even like use it as fertilizer to grow something decent. Like it's got nothing. Rats don't want anything to do with it. Flies are avoiding it. It's not good for anyone so far.
Okay.
I think he should use that phallus push that liquid fecal matter back up his own.
Yes, that's right. It does allow me to make a lot
of
references
of
to
his own column.
So I am getting that, but
get lots of penis references. Oh, it's all good. All right, let's
We're good at that.
This feeling of being just fucked is not entirely uncommon sentiment among men, and especially in the men's rights movement. It is enmeshed in castration and phallicism. And there is a great deal of work to be done surrounding the phallic nature of effective declarations. If it is not women in general who are fucking men, it is their failed mothers who turned them into soft men lacking in masculinity and virility, and turned them against their fathers.
Well, actually, the single motherhood thing is a problem that should be looked at. But this guy's never going to look at that part of the equation when it comes to the issues that we are dealing with, not just with men, but with girls as well, which is another thing he won't acknowledge, is that without fathers, that creates a problem. Just saying. There's like a lot of data out there, but whatever.
And if it's not women in general.
Yeah.
And mothers in particular, then it's the education system that has privileged girls and feminized education and so on. I am not interested in attending to the veracity of these claims, because it is less about the realness of these claims and more about the feeling that motivates these claims.
Wait a second, you fucking sleaze! You just said that men's rights activists focus on the feelings because they don't have the facts to back it up. And now you're saying you don't want to look at the facts, you just want to look at the feelings.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't because the thing is that you don't get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying? No. He's just said that they don't have the facts, and he doesn't want to look at the facts. Wouldn't the facts be where he would undermine
the
what they're
facts
saying?
would be where he'd find out whether or not the emotional reaction is justified or not.
Yes.
But he refuses to do that because all feels are valid. But because these feels are linked to guys basically attempting to reclaim masculinity that they think has been destroyed, it's in. But,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. To continue. I just got frustrated there for a second.
It's all right.
Becomes the mantra of a movement that declares that there is war against boys and that masculinity is in crisis. The movement has a political agenda demanding that we pay attention to its claims, its concerns, its anxieties. It seeks to return masculinity and virility to men, to their rightful position on top. The issue, however, is not about being fucked, but rather about the shameful and humiliating position in which being fucked has put men.
What kind of position?
For a man to be fucked, he must submit, place himself beneath, and become the bottom in the hierarchical structure of the language of fucking.
Wait, this is supposed to be an academic paper? He's just using the word fuck a lot now. And it's just, he's just like, he must be getting to the point where he's like, man, I don't know what else to talk about. Let me just use the word fuck. Just gotta fill the space. Yeah, let me just fill the space with the word fuck here. And, it's...
With this many...
Well, he goes on later to try and justify this because the term fucking relates to sexual violence and not, like, gentle lovemaking and whatnot.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 pages long. I've just been sort of skimming it through. Let's see if I can find it.
And doesn't that relate to the idea that rape is a violation of self?
He also does a lot of talking about people being on their knees in this paper as well.
God.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets a little bit that way inclined. I'll see if I can quickly.
What was the journal this was published in?
With this many with this many innuendos, it's definitely an academic paper.
I'll see if I can find the sexual violence. Here we go, yeah. To be fucked and to fuck are not the same as to make love, to have sex, to engage in coitus. We must admit that fucking contains, quote, the politically fraught complications of sexual violence, unquote. A violence that is equally found in the language which speaks of the war on what, yeah. That's how I think he's trying to justify using this word.
He used the war on women, right?
War on boys.
War on boys, okay. Oh, god damn it.
Oh, that's actually on the next page, from the one that Kodge is reading from, I think.
So it'll be great to listen to Kotter.
Homo sapiens oft find themselves, during intercourse, using their erect members to thrust for a good hardcore fucking, while that dank asshole cries like a bitch. Academia.
Oh my fucking god!
You can call her a hoe. You call her a thought. These are thought. Fucking is a thought crime.
Oh
fucking
god.
Thotimus Prime. Yes, violent as fuck. Oh shit, that's like double violent.
What the hell are you talking?
I'm looking at the chat. I'm fucking around with them.
You're fucking around with the chat.
My shit posting.
Always fun. Yes. Always fun.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we continue with this shit show?
Let me just see where the hell are we?
We're at 26 minutes.
Okay, so we're about halfway through.
Yeah, about halfway through.
Okay, let me see. The issue is, however, is not being fucked, but rather about the shameful and humiliating position in which being fucked has put men. For a man to be fucked, he must submit, place himself beneath, and become the bottom in the hierarchical structure of the language of fucking.
Control F the word fuck.
As scholars have noted, for a man to be penetrated, which is to say fucked, is to surrender his masculinity, to abdicate power. Patrick suggests guys are fucked. His language is fully intentional, especially since fucking is merely expressive. It is an argument. It's not merely expressive, it is an argument. Mm-hmm. When Patrick uses the word, he's making a very real argument, especially since the word itself is not neutral or without value. Oh, God. What? Okay, you know what? Mm-hmm. You don't need this much analysis of the word fucked.
I know. Isn't it just
But he had a word count. He had to meet it.
Didn't it just meet... Yeah, he had a word count. Didn't it just... isn't fuck just the pronunciation of the acronym fornication under consent of the king?
Unlawful consent. Okay. Oh. Whatever is happening or not, men feel that they are getting fucked. They have been fucked, and this is, of course, a fundamentally problematic use of a language in a culture that seemingly cannot escape the sway of rape culture and slut shaming.
Rape culture.
Oh, slut shaming.
Oh my god.
And isn't this slut shaming then? You know, the idea that being fucked for a guy is humiliating? Isn't slut shaming about shame and humiliation? Okay.
Well, yeah, because then they become the slut, which means they are shamed. That's the justification, I think.
You know what? This just keeps going on.
This paper is sapping my will to live.
I think it's time to take a break.
Yeah, it's good. The bleach is creeping closer to my hands. Yes. We should stop. It's gonna be
levitating
at my lips before.
Well, hey, I wonder if you could use super chat in the patron chat.
On a completely unrelated note, how is that bleach flavored cola going, Teal dear?
It is pretty good. We're working on trying to get a few extra flavors in there.
Mm.
Oh yeah,
that's the manufacturing.
You should have some Fanta flavors. They have some good, decent artificial grape and shit like that. You know, maybe Mountain Dew.
Yep. If I can get some cross promotion like that going, that'd be great. And then we can just finally all rage quit from life.
All right.
And you know what's hilarious is even on that video where it's. I'm not even telling people to drink bleach. I've got a feminist commentator who's telling me that this is me trying to like convince feminists they need to kill themselves.
No.
Do you even understand the meme? No, the joke is that when we talk about drinking bleach, that's us wanting to do it because we don't want to have to listen to your stupidity anymore.
Yes. Feminists take you literally, but not seriously.
We're trying to get away from you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I'm pretty much. I'm done.
I'm done too. I'm gonna
You
stop the
ripped it out.
stream. Thank you guys in the chat that are watching. We'll talk to you later. I have to go eat something. Okay.